Come close, children of the soil, and hear a story that will make the proud tremble and the humble stand tall. Our elders say, the child who says his mother will not sleep, he too shall know sleepless nights. This is a story of Chukwudi, who fed on his mother's bones to build his palace, then invited her to his wedding, not to honor her, but to shame her. But listen well. The ancestors were watching, and what the sun planned for mockery, the heavens turned to mirror. Gather close, for this tale still echoes in the marketplace, where women warn their sons, remember Adana's arrival. Ayabo. Are you listening? The story begins not at the wedding, but 28 years earlier, in the village of Omowanyai, place of women, so named because the soil there was so generous that even a woman farming alone could feed her household. But as our elders also say, the sweetest mango tree suffers the harshest storms, and Omowanyai would know suffering despite its blessed name. Adana knelt in her small compound, pounding cassava in the wooden mortar that had belonged to her own mother, and her mother's mother before that. The rhythmic tom-tom-tom of pestle against wood formed a prayer, the same rhythm that had sustained generations of women in her lineage. Her wrapper, faded from countless washings in the stream, was tied firmly above her breast, and sweat carved rivers down her dark skin, catching the early morning light like scattered diamonds. Mama! Mama, I'm hungry. The voice belonged to Chukwudi, her only child, the son for whom she had been both mother and father since her husband Okafor died from the fever that swept through 3 villages like an evil wind. Chukwudi was 7 years old then, with eyes too large for his thin face and a smile that could make even the oldest grandmother reach into her purse for a coin. Come, NWAM, Adana called, using the Igbo endearment, my child. The food is nearly ready. She had been awake since the cock's first crow, preparing the cassava, the small piece of stockfish she'd saved from last market day, and the precious palm oil she used sparingly, measuring each drop like liquid gold. This breakfast would cost her own meal, she would tell Chukwudi she'd eaten earlier, though her stomach had known nothing but water for 2 days. But this was the covenant of mothers, wasn't it? Written not in books but in the flesh and blood, in the midnight pacing when a child has fever, in the going without so that the child might have. Adana had learned this covenant from her own mother, who had whispered to her on her deathbed, a mother's love is the closest thing to the love of the Creator. It asks nothing, gives everything, and even when rejected, continues to flow like the river that cannot stop its journey to the sea. Chukwudi emerged from their 2-room mud house, rubbing sleep from his eyes. The morning sun caught the promise in his face, he would be handsome, this son of hers, with his father's strong jaw and her own clear eyes. Already he was bright in school, the teacher Mr. Okonkwo always saying, this boy, Adana, this boy has a head like a basket that refuses to leak. Everything you pour in stays there. Sit, sit, she said, serving him the fufu with soup in their best enamel plates, the one without cracks. Eat well, so your brain will be sharp at school. Chukwudi ate with the single-minded intensity of growing boys everywhere, but between mouthfuls, he asked the question that had been germinating in his young mind like a seed in rainy season, Mama, why are we poor? The pestle paused midair. Adana set it down carefully, buying herself time. How does a mother answer such a question? How does she explain that poverty is not a moral failure but sometimes simply the portion life serves, as random as the rain that falls on one farm and not another? We are not poor, my son, she said finally, sitting beside him on the low wooden stool. We have health. We have each other. We have our good name. But Emeka's father has a car. And Obiagili's mother sells in the big market with 3 tables full of goods. And we? He gestured around their sparse compound, where the mud walls were cracking and the roof leaked in 5 places during the rains. Adana pulled him close, feeling the sharp bones of his shoulders. He was growing so fast, faster than her meager provisions could support. Listen to me, Chukwudi. Our people say, a child who is carried on the back does not know how far the journey is. Right now, you are young, and you see what we don't have. But one day, you will understand what we do have. What do we have, Mama? We have dignity, she said firmly. We have honesty. Your father and I may not have left you land or money, but we left you a name that no one can speak with shame. That is worth more than 10 cars. But even as she spoke these words she believed with every fiber of her being, she could see they landed on her son's ears like seeds on rocky ground. He was too young, too hungry, too aware of the gap between his worn uniform and the crisp new ones some children wore to school. One day, Mama, Chukwudi said with the fierce certainty of childhood dreams, one day I will be rich. I will have a car, a big house, and you will never pound cassava again. I will buy you a machine that pounds it for you. Adana laughed, the sound like water over stones. You. Listen to my son. Already planning to retire his mother. But first, you must finish this food and go to school. Wealth comes to the educated mind, not the empty one. This conversation, like so many others, became part of the fabric of their lives in Omamwanyai. The years rolled forward with the inexorable patience of the seasons. Adana farmed her small plot, sold vegetables in the market, took in washing for the wealthier families, and sometimes, when things were especially difficult, walked 5 kilometers to work on other people's farms for daily wages that would buy a cup of rice and some stockfish. Every kobo, every precious coin, she saved went to Chukwudi's education. When he passed the examination to attend the prestigious secondary school in the town, 15 kilometers away, she sold her gold earrings, the only jewelry her mother had left her, to pay the fees. Mama, no. Chukwudi had protested, 13 years old now and beginning to understand sacrifice. I can go to the village school. Don't sell your earrings. But Adana was resolute. What are earrings to me? To hang on my ears and make me pretty for whom? My beauty is in you, my son. My jewelry is your success. Go to that school, and make these earrings proud of what they purchased. At the secondary school, Chukwudi excelled. His teachers praised him. His name appeared on the honor
roll every term. But something else was happening too, something Adana noticed during his visits home but did not yet have the words to name. Her son was changing. He came home during holidays with a new way of speaking, his Igbo peppered with English words, his village accent smoothing out. He looked at their compound with different eyes now, eyes that had seen the homes of his wealthier schoolmates, the town with its tarred roads and electricity that didn't fail every night. Mama, why don't we paint the house? He asked during one visit. Paint? Noirem, we will fix the roof first when I have money. Paint doesn't keep the rain out. He fell silent, but she saw the shame flicker across his face when his school friend, who had come to visit, looked around their compound with barely concealed pity. Still, Adana told herself, this was normal. Children who travel away always return seeing home through new eyes. He would understand when he was older. He would remember the values she taught him. When Chukwudi gained admission to the university, the great university of Nigeria, Nsukka, where the brightest minds went, the whole village celebrated. Adana slaughtered her only chicken, the one she'd been saving for emergencies, and cooked jollof rice to share with neighbors who came to congratulate her. Adana, your suffering has not been in vain, old Maman Kairu said, her voice cracking with emotion. This boy will lift you from poverty. Chai. When he graduates and gets a big job, you will rest, another neighbor added. But the village wise woman, Mama Neka, who some said could see tomorrow with the same clarity others saw yesterday, said something different. Adana, you have planted a great seed. But remember, a tree that grows too fast sometimes forgets the earth that nourished it. Pray that your son remembers his roots. Adana laughed off the concern. My Chukwudi? Never. That boy knows how I suffered for him. He can never forget. Oh, but how often the thing we say never to is the very thing that comes to pass. To pay for university, Adana did what she had never thought she would do. She borrowed money from the microfinance cooperative, putting up a small plot of land as collateral. The interest was high, but what choice did she have? Her son's education was nearly complete. Just 4 more years, and he would graduate, get a job, and then, finally, they would rest together. Chukwudi left for university with a metal box containing his clothes, a Bible Adana had saved to buy, and her blessings. Go well, my son, she said at the motor park, trying not to cry as he boarded the bus that would take him to Nsukka. Study hard. Remember who you are. Remember where you come from. Yes, Mama, he said, but his eyes were already on the journey ahead, on the life waiting for him beyond Umunwanyi's red dirt roads. And then began the long, slow silence. At first, Chukwudi came home for holidays. Then he came only for Christmas. Then he sent word that he had to stay in school for extra lessons. Then the letters became infrequent. Then they stopped altogether. Adana told herself he was busy. University was demanding. Her son was studying hard, building the future they had both sacrificed for. She continued farming, continued washing clothes, continued making payments to the microfinance cooperative, the interest growing like a weed she couldn't quite uproot. In his 4th year, Chukwudi called from a classmate's phone. Mama, I need money for my final project. She didn't ask how he got the number. The new telecommunications mast had finally brought mobile phone service to their area. She didn't ask why he hadn't called before. She only asked, how much, Noirem? The amount he named made her knees weak. But she said, I will find it. She borrowed more, this time from a private lender whose interest rates were whispered about in the market with the same fear women spoke of the night spirits. But what was she to do? Her son was in his final year. She could not let him fail when the finish line was so close. Chukwudi graduated with 2nd-class upper honors. Adana could not afford the transport and succor for the ceremony, but she killed a small goat in Thanksgiving, sharing the meat with neighbors who had prayed for her son throughout the years. He will come home now, she told them, and we will plan the next step together. But Chukwudi did not come home. Instead, he sent a brief message through someone's phone. Mama, I have to stay in Lagos for job interviews. I will send money soon. The soon stretched from weeks to months. Adana's debt grew. The land she had put up as collateral was at risk. She took on more washing, worked longer hours on other people's farms, ate once a day, and sometimes not at all. And then, one day, 18 months after his graduation, Chukwudi called. Mama, I have good news. I got a job. A very good job with an oil company in Port Harcourt. Adana's knees buckled with relief and joy. Chukwu Gozigi. God bless you, my son. I always knew. Yes, Mama. Your prayers have worked. I start next month. When will you come home so we can give Thanksgiving? A pause. Then, Mama, I'm very busy with preparations. But I will send you money. I promise. He did send money, once. Enough to buy a bag of rice and pay 1 month's installment on her debt. It was something, and Adana thanked God for it. She waited for the next month's money. It didn't come. She called the number he'd used. It was switched off. She sent messages through neighbors who had phones. No response. 2 years passed. Then 3. Adana aged rapidly, the worry and work carving lines deep into her face. Her hair, which had been pepper and salt, turned completely white. The neighbors who once congratulated her now avoided her eyes, not knowing what to say about the son who had disappeared like smoke. Some whispered, maybe he died and no one told her. Others said, maybe he's ashamed he hasn't made it as big as he claimed. But Mama Neka, the wise woman, said, no. He lives. He has even prospered. But prosperity has made him forget the womb that carried him. And then, one Wednesday afternoon, as Adana sat in her compound mending a torn wrapper, a young man in a clean shirt rode up on a motorcycle. Mama Chukwudi, he called. Her heart leaped. News of her son. Yes, I am she. He handed her an envelope. I was paid to deliver this to you. With trembling hands, Adana opened it. Inside was a card, glossy, expensive, with gold lettering. You are invited to the wedding of Mr. Chukwudi Okafor and Miss Zainab Musa Ibrahim. Date, December 28th. Venue, Golden Gates Hotel, Port Harcourt. Time, 12 noon. Adana's hands shook so violently the card nearly fell. Her son was getting married. Her Chukwudi was getting married, and he had sent an invitation instead of coming himself to tell her, to ask her blessing, to perform the traditional rites. The young man shifted uncomfortably. Mama, there is something else. What? The man who paid me, he said, He said I should tell you that transport will not be provided, but you are welcome to come if you can find your way. If she can find her way. To Port Harcourt. Over 200 kilometers away. With what money? The young man left. Adana sat in her compound, the invitation in her lap, and for the first time in all her years of suffering, she wept. Not quietly, but with the kind of sobs that come from the deepest chamber of the heart, where hope goes to die. What would you do if your child, for whom you sacrificed everything, sent such coldness wrapped in an invitation? What does this remind you of from your own heritage about the pain of ingratitude? Mama Necker found Adana weeping in her compound that evening. After hearing the story, the old woman's eyes grew dark with knowledge. This is not just an invitation, she said slowly. I have seen this before. Your son, he does not want you there to bless him. He wants you there for another reason entirely. A reason that will break your heart if we do not act. What did Mama Necker see? What terrible intention lay behind that gold-lettered card? Mama Necker was ancient, so old that even the oldest in the village could not remember time when she was young. Her face was a roadmap of wrinkles, each one earned through decades of witnessing the foolishness and wisdom of humanity in equal measure. She was a diviner, a keeper of old knowledge, one who could read the patterns in cola nuts the way others read books. She sat now in Adana's compound, her bony hand gripping Adana's wrist with surprising strength. Fetch me water, she commanded. And find 4 cola nuts. Adana, still wiping tears from her face, obeyed. In her culture, when an elder spoke in that tone, you did not ask questions. You simply moved. She brought the clay pot of water and searched her meager provisions for cola nuts, the sacred seed that her people said contained the essence of life itself. She found 3 and had to borrow 1 from her neighbor. Mama Necker arranged the cola nuts on a raffia mat, her lips moving in the silent incantations of the ancestors. Then she cast them, watching how they fell, reading their pattern like others might read newspaper. Her face darkened. Tu fiacqua. God forbid. She spat to the side, the traditional way of rejecting evil. Adana, sit down. What I must tell you will hurt more than childbirth, but you must hear it. Adana sat, her wrapper clutched tight around her, her heart already racing with dread. Your son, Mama Necker began, her voice like dry leaves rustling, has grown tall in the city. He has money now, a big job, and he is marrying a woman from a wealthy family, a Hausa-woman whose father owns fleets of trucks and whose mother's people have connections that reach to the capital. But that is good news, is it not? Adana's voice trembled with desperate hope. He has succeeded. He has. Let me finish. Mama Necker's voice cracked like a whip. This woman, this Zainab, she does not know about you. Adana's breath caught. What do you mean she doesn't know about me? I am his mother. She knows he has a mother. But your son has lied to her. He has told her that you are dead. The words hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Adana's mouth opened and closed, but no sound emerged. Dead? Her son had told his bride that she was dead? He told her you died when he was young, Mama Necker continued, each word a knife thrust. He told her he was raised by a wealthy uncle who sent him to the best schools. He has created a whole new history for himself, Adana. A history where poverty never touched him, where village life never claimed him, where you. She paused, her ancient eyes filling with sorrow, where you never existed. Then why? Adana could barely form words. Why did he send the invitation? If he wants me dead, why invite me? This was the question that made Mama Necker's face twist with anger and disgust. Because, my daughter, wickedness has entered your son's heart like a worm enters fruit. He has invited you there to show you off to his new friends, the wealthy young men he now calls brothers. I have heard things through the spirits, through the whispers that travel on the wind. Your son has been boasting in his circles about his humorous plan. What plan? Adana's voice was barely a whisper. He wants to parade you before them. To show them the poor, village woman who raised him and then point to how far he has risen above such shameful beginnings. His friends know about this invitation. They are expecting you to arrive in your village wrapper, your old slippers, your poverty displayed like a spectacle. They will laugh, take pictures, and your son will stand among them, shaking his head as if to say, see what I escaped from? See how far I've come. The words crashed over Adana like waves, each one pulling her further from the shore of understanding. This could not be her Chukwudi. Not the boy she had carried on her back while farming. Not the child who once told her she was the most beautiful woman in the world. Not the son who had cried when he left for university and promised to make her proud. The bride, his Zainab, she will not be there for this spectacle, Mama Necker continued. The invitation is for the day before the wedding, during what they call the bachelor's party, a gathering of men before the marriage. He has timed it perfectly. You will come, he will humiliate you before his friends, give you some money to send you away, and the next day, he will marry his bride who still believes his mother is dead and buried. Adana stood up abruptly, her legs somehow carrying her even though she felt like her bones had turned to water. She walked to the edge of her compound, looking out at the village that had been her whole world, the red earth paths, the compounds with their mud walls, the cassava farms stretching toward the forest, the smoke rising from cooking fires as women prepared evening meals. This was the world her son was ashamed of. This was the life he wanted to erase like chalk from a blackboard. I will not go, she said finally, her voice hollow. I will not give him the satisfaction. Let him marry his bride. Let him live his lie. I will not go. But Mama Necker stood too, her bones creaking like old wood. And that is exactly what he hopes for, daughter. He sends the invitation knowing you cannot afford transport, knowing you have no fine clothes, knowing that even if you could go, you would be too ashamed. He sends it to wound you, to make you complicit in your own erasure. He wants you to choose silence, to choose invisibility, so he can continue his lie with a clear conscience, telling himself, I invited her, but she chose not to come. The old woman's words struck like lightning, illuminating a truth Adana had not seen. This invitation was not mercy. It was a calculated cruelty. It was a way for Chukwudi to silence his conscience while sharpening the knife for her heart. What do I do? Adana asked, and in that moment, she sounded like a child herself, lost and seeking guidance. Mama Necker was quiet for a long moment, her eyes distant, as if consulting with spirits only she could see. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of prophecy. Our people have a saying, the child who does not know the value of his mother's breast will be taught by hunger. Your son must be taught, Adana. But not by you debasing yourself further. Not by you arriving in rags to confirm his mockery. She gripped Adana's shoulders with both hands. He must be taught by the ancestors themselves. And I believe, yes, I believe they are already stirring. What do you mean? Go home. Sleep. Tomorrow, we will consult the oracle properly. But tonight, I want you to do something. Take that invitation card and place it under your pillow. Pray to your Kai, to your guardian spirit. Pray to your mother's spirit and your grandmother's spirit. Tell them what your son has done. The ancestors do not sleep, Adana. They are watching. And they do not look kindly upon children who spit on the womb that carried them. That night, Adana did as instructed. She placed the gold-lettered invitation under her thin pillow and lay down on her mat. Sleep seemed impossible. Her mind was a storm of memories, pain, and disbelief. But eventually, exhaustion claimed her. And in that sleep, she dreamed. She dreamed she was young again, heavy with pregnancy, walking the long road to the stream. But in the dream, the road never ended. She walked and walked, her belly growing heavier, her legs aching, and ahead of her, always ahead of her, she could see a figure, her son, Chukwudi, running away, getting smaller and smaller until he was just a dot on the horizon. She tried to call to him, but her voice made no sound. She tried to run, but her legs were stuck in mud. And then she heard a voice, not Chukwudi's, but a woman's voice, ancient and powerful. A tree that forgets its roots will fall in the slightest wind. The fruit that despises the branch will rot before ripening. But the mother who suffers with dignity will see the ancestors move on her behalf. Wait, daughter. Wait and watch. Your tears have been counted. Your sacrifices have been weighed. Justice is preparing to wear its dancing clothes. Adana woke with a start, the words still echoing in her ears. The dream had been so vivid, so real, that she looked around expecting to see someone in the room. But she was alone, with only the early morning light filtering through the cracks in her wall and the sound of roosters announcing the new day. She rose, washed her face in the basin, and wrapped her cloth around her. Today was market day. Whatever the ancestors had planned, she still had to eat. She still had debts to pay. Life, in its mundane necessity, continued even when the heart was broken. At the market, Adana set up a small table with vegetables from her farm, okra, bitter leaf, ugu, and some tomatoes. The market was already buzzing with activity, women calling out their wares, children running between stalls, the air thick with the smell of roasting plantain and akara frying in oil. Adana. Adana. She looked up to see Obiageli, a woman from the next village who sold smoked fish. Obiageli was waving her over with unusual excitement. What is it? Adana asked, walking to her friend's stall. Do you know who was looking for you yesterday? Obiageli's eyes were wide with the thrill of gossip. A big woman from Port Harcourt. She came in a car, not a taxi-o, her own personal car. She was asking, where can I find Adana, mother of Chukwudi? Adana's heart began to race. Who was she? What did she want? We didn't know. She didn't say her name. But she left a phone number with Mama Ekan, said you should call her urgently. She said it was about your son. The market suddenly felt too loud, too bright, too crowded. Adana steadied herself against the table. Where is Mama Ekan? There, under the mango tree. Adana practically ran to Mama Ekan's provision stall. The older woman saw her coming and immediately pulled out a small piece of paper from her wrapper. Adana, thank God. That woman who came yesterday, she was so worried. She said it was very urgent that you call this number. She even left me money for you to use at the call center. Mama Ekan pressed the paper and some naira notes into Adana's palm. With trembling hands, Adana walked to the small wooden kiosk at the edge of the market where a young man ran a call center, a few phones available for those who couldn't afford their own. She handed him the number and the money. He dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a woman's voice, educated and warm, answered. Hello? Is this Adana? Mama Chukwudi? Yes, this is she. Who is this, please? Thank God I found you. The woman's voice carried both relief and urgency. My name is Dr. Ifema Okonkwo. I am a professor at the University of Port Harcourt. And Mama Adana, I need to speak with you about your son, but not on the phone. It's too important. Can you meet me? I will come to you if necessary. What is this about? Is Chukwudi all right? Has something happened to him? He is physically well, Mama, Dr. Ifema said carefully. But something is very wrong, and I believe you need to know about it. I heard about the wedding invitation he sent you. I know what he's planning. Adana's knees weakened. How do you know about that? Because, and here Dr. Ifema's voice hardened with anger, my nephew is one of his friends. The boy came to my house laughing about it, showing me messages, thinking I would find it funny. I am ashamed to say someone from my family thought such cruelty was entertainment. She paused. Mama Adana, I was raised by a single mother myself. What your son is planning, it made my blood boil. I had to find you. I had to help. Adana was crying now, unable to stop the tears. A stranger, a professor from the city, had tracked her down because of outrage on her behalf while her own son plotted her humiliation. I cannot go to Port Harcourt, Adana said through her tears. I have no money, no clothes fit for such a place, no. Mama, please, Dr. Ifema interrupted gently. Just listen to me. I want to help you, but I need to meet you first. Can I come to your village tomorrow? I need to speak with you face to face. Will you allow this? What did Adana have to lose? She gave directions to Umunwanyi. The next morning, just as the sun reached its full strength, a silver Honda pulled into the village, causing children to stop their play and adults to come out of their compounds. Cars rarely came to Umunwanyi unless someone had died or something extraordinary was happening. From the car emerged a woman in her 50s, elegant in a simple Ankara dress, her natural hair cut short, her face kind but determined. She looked around, spotted Adana waiting nervously by her compound, and walked straight to her with arms outstretched. Mama Adana, she said, and to Adana's shock, this educated woman, this professor, knelt briefly in the traditional greeting of respect to elders. I am Ifema. Thank you for agreeing to see me. They sat in Adana's compound, and Mama Neka, who had somehow known to be there, joined them. Dr. Ifema did not waste time. I will be direct, she said. Your son is planning to humiliate you at his bachelor's party. He has invited his friends to witness it. They are expecting you to arrive looking poor in village, and they plan to mock you, take videos, and laugh. She reached into her bag and pulled out a smartphone, showing Adana screenshots of messages that made Adana's stomach turn. Guys, my village mother is coming to my party. Wait till you see her. Pure comedy. I told Zainab my mom died. Now I'm bringing the ghost to my bachelor party lol. This will be legendary. The look on her face when she realizes we're all laughing at her. Adana read the messages, each word a nail driven into her heart. This was her son. Her Chukwudi. The boy she had nearly starved herself to feed. But, Dr. Efima continued, her voice taking on a different tone, something almost fierce. What if the ancestors had other plans? What if, instead of arriving as the poor village woman he expects, you arrived in glory? What if his plan for your humiliation became the stage for your vindication? Mama Neka's eyes gleamed. Now you are speaking the language of the spirits, Professor. Have you ever witnessed someone's cruelty turned back upon them by divine intervention? What would your elders say about a child who mocks the mother who sacrificed everything? Dr. Efima leaned forward. Mama Adana, I am part of a network of professional women, doctors, lawyers, professors, businesswomen. We call ourselves Daughters of Dignity. We are all women who were raised by struggling single mothers. Women who remember when we had nothing. We have been looking for a way to make a statement about honoring our mothers, about the dignity of the women who sacrificed for us. She pulled out a folder from her bag. We want to sponsor you. We want to send you to that bachelor party not in rags, but in royalty. We want to dress you, transport you, and show your son and his mocking friends that poverty is not shame, but forgetting your mother is. Adana was shaking her head, overwhelmed. I cannot accept charity. I cannot. This is not charity, Dr. Efima said firmly. This is justice. This is the ancestors working through willing hands. And Mama, with respect, this is bigger than you now. Do you know how many mothers are suffering in silence from ungrateful children? How many women are being erased from their children's success stories? Your story, your dignity in the face of this, could speak for thousands. Mama Neka placed her hand on Adana's arm. The dream you had, daughter. The voice that told you to wait and watch, that justice was preparing to dance. This is it. These women are the ancestors' answer. Adana looked from the old diviner to the young professor, and something shifted in her spirit. Perhaps Mama Neka was right. Perhaps this was bigger than her pain. Perhaps her humiliation, if she allowed it, would only embolden other ungrateful children. But her vindication. What do you want me to do? She asked quietly. Dr. Efima smiled, and it was the smile of a general who had just secured a crucial ally. First, we need to prepare you. Not change you, Mama, never that. But present you as you truly are, a woman of dignity, a woman of strength, a woman who deserves honor. Can you come to Port Harcourt 3 days before the wedding? My farm, my debts, I cannot just. We will handle your debts, Dr. Efima said simply. How much do you owe? When Adana, shamefaced, named the amount that had been crushing her for years, Dr. Efima didn't even blink. She made a phone call right there, and within minutes, it was arranged. The microfinance cooperative would be paid. The private lender would be paid. Adana's land was safe. But I must repay you, Adana protested. You will, Dr. Efima said. By holding your head high in that room. By showing your son what he has failed to see. By being the queen you have always been, even when you wore poverty like a cloak. That will be payment enough. Over the next week, Umunwanyi buzzed with the news. Adana was going to Port Harcourt. Not in shame, but in honor. The women of the village, who had watched her struggle for years, rallied around her. They plaited her hair, gave her their blessings, and Mama Neka performed a ritual, calling on the ancestors to guide Adana's steps. Remember, the old woman said as she drew uli patterns on Adana's arms with white chalk, the traditional markings of significance, you are not going there for revenge. Revenge is for the small-hearted. You are going there for revelation. Your son has forgotten who he is. When he sees you, truly sees you, the veil will fall from his eyes. And if it doesn't? Adana asked quietly. What if his heart has turned completely to stone? Mama Neka was quiet for a moment. Then, daughter, you will have the satisfaction of knowing you stood in your truth. And that stone will one day crack. Maybe not that day, but one day. Seeds planted in tears always grow, even if we don't live to see the harvest. 3 days before the wedding, Dr. Efima returned with 2 other women from her network, a lawyer named Chine and a businesswoman named Amora. They loaded Adana's small bag into the car, and the village gathered to see her off. "Go well, Adana," they called. "Show them who we are," the women ululated. "Teach that boy sense," old Papa Obi shouted, shaking his walking stick. As the car pulled away from Umunwanyi, Adana looked back at the only home she had ever known, the red earth, the mud compounds, the cassava farms, the stream where she had washed clothes until her hands cracked. She was not ashamed of this place. She had never been ashamed. But her son was, and that truth sat in her chest like a stone. The drive to Port Harcourt took 4 hours. Adana watched the landscape change from village to town to city, the roads getting wider, the buildings getting taller, the chaos getting louder. This was the world Chukwudi now inhabited. A world so far from the village that perhaps it had made him forget. They arrived at Dr. Efima's house in a quiet neighborhood called GRA, Government Reserved Area. The house was beautiful, with a gate and flowers and tiles that shone. Adana felt out of place immediately. "Welcome, Mama," Dr. Efima said warmly, sensing her discomfort. "You are not a guest here. You are an honored mother. My own mother, if she were alive, would be proud to have you in her home." That evening, 6 women gathered in Dr. Efima's living room, all members of the Daughters of Dignity. They were successful women, educated women, powerful women. But as they went around introducing themselves, each one shared the same story: a struggling mother, a single mother, a mother who sacrificed, a mother who gave everything. "My mother sold firewood to send me to school," said Chine the lawyer. "My mother was a house help who saved every kobo for my school fees," said Amora the businesswoman. "My mother farmed cassava, just like you, Mama Adana," said another woman, Dr. Ngozi, a surgeon. "I remember her hands, always cracked and bleeding. But she never complained." One by one, they honored their mothers through Adana. And Adana realized this was not just about her anymore. She was standing in for all the mothers who had been forgotten, erased, or hidden away by children who had climbed to success on their mothers' bent backs. "Tomorrow," Dr. Efima said, "we prepare you. But tonight, we honor you. Mama Adana, would you give us your blessing?" And Adana, who had felt so small, so worthless in her son's eyes, stood before these accomplished women and raised her hands in the traditional blessing. "May your days be long. May your children rise up and call you blessed. May you never know the pain of ingratitude. May the work of your hands prosper. May the ancestors guide your steps. May you always remember those who have nothing, for you yourselves came from nothing." "I see. I see," the women responded, the traditional affirmation echoing through the room. That night, Adana slept in a soft bed for the first time in her life. But her dreams were restless. She kept seeing Chukwudi as a boy, kept hearing his voice saying, "Mama, I will take care of you. You will never suffer again." How had that promise turned into this betrayal? The next morning, as the women began Adana's transformation, Dr. Efima received a phone call that made her face go pale. "We have a problem," she said, hanging up. "Chukwudi somehow found out that someone has been helping his mother. He's made a new plan, something worse than before. If we're not careful, this could backfire spectacularly." What new cruelty had Chukwudi devised? Had they underestimated how far his shame would drive him? The phone call came from Dr. Efima's nephew, the same young man whose thoughtless laughter about Chukwudi's plan had ignited this entire intervention. But now, shame had worked its transformation in him, and he was calling with urgent intelligence. "Auntie," his voice was low, conspiratorial, "I need to tell you something. Chukwudi knows." Dr. Efima's grip tightened on the phone. "Knows what exactly?" "He doesn't know details, but someone told him that his mother has been upgraded. That's the word they used. One of the guys saw your car in Umunwanyi last week and posted about it on social media, joking about a village woman getting visited by city people. Somehow the post got back to Chukwudi's circle, and they connected it to his mother. And..." Dr. Efima's voice was steady, but Adana could see the tension in her shoulders. "And his laughing about it, Auntie. His telling everyone that it doesn't matter what packaging they try to put on her, that poverty has a smell that no perfume can cover. But that's not the worst part." The young man paused. He's planned something new. He's invited some local comedians to his party. You know those Instagram comedians who do skits making fun of village people? They're going to be there specifically to interview his mother, to ask her embarrassing questions, to make content out of her. The room went silent. The women who had gathered, all 6 of them, plus Adana, sat frozen, absorbing this new dimension of cruelty. Content, Dr. Chine repeated, her lawyer's mind immediately grasping the implications. He wants to turn his mother into viral entertainment. Videos that will live on the internet forever. My God, whispered Amora. This boy is not just ashamed. He's wicked. But Adana surprised them all. She stood up, and though her voice trembled slightly, her words were clear, let him do his worst. Every head turned to her. Mama, Dr. Efima began. No, listen to me, Adana said, and in that moment, she channeled every ancestral mother who had ever stood firm in the face of wickedness. My son thinks poverty is shame. He thinks being village is shame. He thinks the mother who carried him for 9 months, who nearly died bringing him into this world, who starved so he could eat, he thinks I am the shame. Her voice grew stronger. But our elders say, the goat that runs from the knife does not know that running is what tires it for the slaughter. Let Chukwudi run with his plans. Let him tire himself out with his wickedness. The bigger his plan for my humiliation, the bigger his own shame will be when the ancestors turn the tables. Mama Neka had given Adana a small pouch before she left the village, protective herbs and a prayer wrapped in red cloth. Adana had tied it around her waist under her wrapper. Now she touched it through the fabric, drawing strength from the connection to home, to the ancestors, to the long line of women who had survived worse than ungrateful children. Besides, Adana continued, a small smile playing at her lips, these comedians, these Instagram people, they are expecting a poor village woman who will be confused and easy to mock. But what if I am not confused? What if I answer their questions with the kind of wisdom they have never encountered? What if I make them the ones who look foolish? Dr. Ngozi, the surgeon, began to smile. Mama, have you been hiding your warrior spirit from us? I am Igbo, Adana said simply. We do not raise cowards. Even our women know how to fight. My son may have forgotten this, but I have not. The energy in the room shifted. What had felt like a setback now felt like an opportunity. Dr. Efima put her phone on speaker and told her nephew, tell Chukwudi's friends that you heard his mother is afraid to come, that she's probably going to send an excuse. Make them comfortable. Make them think their plan is working perfectly. Auntie, are you sure about this? Very sure. And nephew, after this is over, you and I are going to have a long conversation about the kind of man you're choosing to become. The shame in his voice was palpable. Yes, Auntie. After the call ended, the women moved into action with military precision. Dr. Efima laid out the plan. We have 2 days. Mama Adana, we're not going to dress you like a city woman trying to be something she's not. That would be dishonest, and dishonesty is what we're fighting against. Instead, we're going to present you as exactly what you are, a village woman, a farmer, a mother, but in your full glory and dignity. She pulled out her laptop and showed Adana images of traditional Igbo women in ceremonial dress. This is our heritage. This is what our great-grandmothers wore when they were being honored. Rich wrappers, coral beads, the full traditional regalia. You will arrive looking like the village queen you are. But such things are expensive, Adana protested. The coral beads alone are already purchased, Amora said, pulling out a long strand of deep orange coral beads that gleamed like captured sunlight. My mother left these for me. She wore them at my wedding. I can think of no better use for them than this. Dr. Chine brought out a George wrapper, the expensive fabric that shimmered with gold thread. From my mother's collection. She would want you to have it. One by one, the women contributed items that had belonged to their own mothers, transforming Adana's outfit into a collective ancestral blessing. Each piece of clothing, each bead, each accessory carried a story of maternal sacrifice and strength. But Dr. Efima had one more surprise. Mama Adana, you will not arrive at that party in just any vehicle. You will arrive in a way that announces, a queen is here. She made a phone call, spoke rapidly in Igbo, then smiled at Adana. My husband's cousin owns a luxury car rental business. He's giving us a white Hummer limousine for the day. Free of charge. A Hummer. Adana had seen such vehicles in Nollywood movies but never in real life. Is that not too much? Too much. Dr. Ngozi laughed. Mama, Your son wants to humble you before comedians and camera phones. We want to arrive with such impact that every phone in that room will be recording, but recording your glory, not your shame. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of preparation. But it wasn't just about clothes and cars. Dr. Efima, who had a PhD in psychology, sat with Adana for hours, preparing her mentally for what was to come. Mama, when those comedians start asking you questions designed to embarrass you, I want you to remember something. Wisdom is not about having been to university. Wisdom is about having lived, having suffered, having learned. You have wisdom they cannot buy with all their followers and likes. They practiced. Dr. Chine, who had been a debate champion, played the role of the mocking interviewer. So, Mama, we hear you're from the village. Do you people still use firewood to cook? Adana's first instinct was to feel ashamed, but Dr. Efima coached her, answer with pride. Truth is never shameful. Adana tried again. Yes, we use firewood. The same way our ancestors did when they built the great kingdoms of Igboland. The same way women have cooked nutritious meals for centuries. Tell me, in your city with all your gas cookers, does your food taste like it was kissed by smoke and blessed by fire? Does it carry the prayers of the woman who blew on the coals while thinking of her children's health? The women erupted in applause. That. Dr. Efima exclaimed. That is what I'm talking about. Turn every question into an opportunity to teach them something. They continued the practice sessions. Mama, is it true you're a farmer? That you work in the soil like a common laborer? I am a farmer. Yes. I work with the soil that feeds nations. Tell me, young man, where does your rice come from? Your yam? Your vegetables? From the supermarket? No. From the hands of women like me who know how to coax life from the earth. When you have eaten today, you have been fed by someone's mother who knows the language of the soil. Maybe even mine. Mama, why didn't you go to school? Are you illiterate? I attended school until my father could no longer afford it. But illiterate? No, my son. I can read the sky and tell you when rain is coming. I can read the soil and tell you what will grow there. I can read a child's cry and tell you exactly what they need. I can read faces and tell you who is honest and who is not. These things are not written in books, but they are literacy nonetheless. Can you read these things, with all your schooling? With each practiced response, Adana's confidence grew. She was beginning to understand that she had been tricked, by poverty, by her son, by society, into believing that her life had less value because it had less money. But these women, successful as they were, kept pointing her back to the truth. Dignity is not bought. It is inherent. It is unshakable. And she had it in abundance. On the evening before the bachelor party, the women held a ceremony in Dr. Efima's living room. They called it the crowning of the mother. They dressed Adana in the George wrapper that hugged her thin frame and somehow made her look regal rather than malnourished. They adorned her neck with the coral beads, 7 strands that clicked together like a sacred rhythm. They placed gold bangles on her wrists, gifts from each woman present. Dr. Ngozi, who had a flair for makeup, worked on Adana's face, but minimally. We're not hiding you, Mama. We're just highlighting the queen that's already there. She traced Adana's cheekbones with a subtle bronze, lined her eyes with kohl, painted her lips with a rich brown. When Adana finally stood before the full-length mirror, she gasped. The woman looking back at her was familiar yet transformed. The white hair she had been ashamed of was now styled into an elegant updo, wrapped with gold thread. The lines on her face, each one earned through years of struggle, now looked like marks of character rather than defeat. The thin frame that poverty had carved now appeared dignified, austere, almost priestess-like. I look. She couldn't find the words. Like a mother should look when her son gets married, Dr. Efima finished gently. Like someone worthy of honor. Like someone who sacrificed everything and stands unbroken. Like someone the ancestors are proud of. But it was Dr. Chine who said what they were all thinking, Mama Adana, your son is going to see you tomorrow and realize, perhaps for the first time in years, exactly who his mother is. And that realization is going to break something in him. The question is whether it will break his pride or his heart. We can only pray it's both. They prayed then, Christian prayers, traditional prayers, a mixture of both. Dr. Efima called on the God of Abraham. Adana called on her Kai and the spirits of her mother and grandmother. Someone poured libation in the backyard, calling on the ancestors to guide the next day's events. But remember, Mama Neka had told Adana before she left the village, you are not going there to destroy your son. You are going there to save him from himself. Vengeance belongs to the ancestors. Your job is simply to stand in your truth. That night, Adana barely slept. She kept thinking of Chukwudi as a baby, the way he would wrap his tiny hand around her finger, the complete trust in his eyes when he looked at her, the sound of his laughter when she bounced him on her knee. Where had that boy gone? When had love turned to shame? She thought of his father, Okafor, dead these 21 years. What would he say if he could see his son now? Okafor had been a good man, a humble man, a man who honored his mother and treated Adana with respect even when they had nothing. He would be heartbroken. Forgive me, my husband, Adana whispered into the darkness. I tried to raise him with the values you would have taught him. I don't know where I failed. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. She hadn't failed. She had loved, sacrificed, taught, and modeled dignity. Her son's choices were his own. At some point, every child must answer for the person they choose to become, regardless of how they were raised. The morning of the bachelor party arrived with a kind of sunshine that seemed almost mocking in its cheerfulness. Adana rose early, bathed in water that Dr. Efima had prepared with special herbs, for confidence and protection, she said, and allowed the women to dress her once more in the ceremonial outfit. At 11 a.m., the white Hummer limousine pulled up to Dr. Efima's gate. The driver, a tall man named Emeka, stepped out wearing a crisp black suit and cap. When he saw Adana, he immediately showed respect, bowing slightly. Mama, it is my honor to drive you today, he said. My own mother is a petty trader in Onitsha. When Dr. Efima told me this story, I told her I would drive you for free. Some things are bigger than money. The women escorted Adana to the vehicle. Dr. Efima would ride with her. The others would follow in their own cars, a convoy of support, an army of mothers and daughters united in purpose. As Adana settled into the plush leather seats of the Hummer, the absurdity of the situation almost made her laugh. Yesterday she was in Umunwani, wondering how she would pay her debts. Today she was riding in a vehicle that cost more than her entire compound, dressed like royalty, on her way to confront the son who wished her dead. The ancestors have a sense of humor, she murmured. Dr. Efima smiled. They do. But they also have a sense of justice. Are you ready, Mama? Adana touched the pouch of herbs at her waist, felt the weight of the coral beads at her neck, and thought of all the mothers, in her village, in her family line, across the whole of Africa, who had suffered indignity from ungrateful children. She thought of the women in Dr. Efima's network, each carrying their own stories of maternal sacrifice. I am ready, she said. The venue was the Golden Gates Hotel, a luxury establishment on the outskirts of Port Harcourt. As they drove through the city, people stopped and stared at the white Hummer. Some took pictures. Children waved. Adana sat up straight, her hands folded in her lap, her face serene. You look like you're going to a coronation, not a confrontation, Dr. Efima observed. Perhaps, Adana replied, they are the same thing. Is not every trial a chance to be crowned or defeated? Did not our ancestors say, it is in the moment of testing that the true king is revealed? They arrived at the Golden Gates at exactly 12:30 p.m., deliberately late. Chukwudi's bachelor party had started at noon, and Dr. Efima's nephew had confirmed that the comedians were already there, the drinks flowing, the mockery ready to begin. They keep asking when the special guest is arriving, the nephew had texted. Chukwudi keeps checking his phone. He's nervous but trying to act confident. He's been telling everyone that his mother is probably lost, that village people don't understand city navigation. Perfect. Let them be comfortable in their assumptions. The Hummer pulled up to the hotel entrance, and immediately, the valets and security guards snapped to attention. This was the kind of vehicle that announced, someone important has arrived. Emeka stepped out, walked around, and opened Adana's door. She emerged slowly, deliberately, giving the growing crowd of onlookers time to take in the sight. An elegantly dressed elderly woman in full traditional Igbo regalia, dripping with coral beads, her head held high, her bearing that of someone who had every right to be exactly where she was. A hotel guest whispered to her companion, "Who is that? Is she a traditional ruler? Maybe a wealthy matriarch from one of the old families." Dr. Efima emerged from the other side, and the convoy of women pulled up behind them, 5 expensive cars releasing 5 accomplished women who immediately flanked Adana like a royal guard. They walked toward the hotel entrance, And with each step, Adana felt something shifting inside her. Fear was being replaced by something else. Not anger, not revenge, but a quiet, unshakable certainty. She knew who she was. The question was, would her son remember? The bachelor party was being held in the hotel's banquet hall. Dr. Efima had obtained the room number through her connections, and they rode the elevator to the 3rd floor. With each floor they ascended, Adana's heart beat faster. "Remember," Dr. Efima whispered, "you are not here to convince him to love you. You cannot force someone to honor you. You are here simply to stand in your dignity. The rest is up to him and the ancestors." They could hear the party before they saw it. Loud music, laughter, the clink of glasses. Dr. Efima pushed open the double doors to the banquet hall, and for a moment, everything seemed to happen in slow motion. The hall was decorated lavishly with green and gold, the colors Chukwudi had chosen for his wedding. About 40 men were present, some dancing, some drinking, some clustered around 2 young men with professional cameras who were clearly the Instagram comedians. And there, in the center of the room, holding court like a king, was Chukwudi. He had changed so much. Gone was the thin, eager boy from Umunwanyi. This man was filled out, well-dressed in an expensive agbada, his wrist heavy with a gold watch, his neck adorned with a thick gold chain. He was laughing at something someone said, his head thrown back in the kind of careless mirth of someone who had never known real trouble. Adana's heart clenched. This was her son. Her baby. The child she had rocked to sleep singing lullabies. The boy who once told her she was his whole world. The music was loud enough that no one noticed the doors opening at first. But then someone saw the entourage of women, saw Adana in her regal bearing, and the confusion spread like ripples in water. Who is that? Is she part of the wedding party? She looks important. One of the comedians, seeing cameras and content opportunity, rushed forward with his phone already recording. "Mama. Welcome. You look like royalty. Oh. Are you here for the party?" Before Adana could respond, Dr. Efima stepped forward with the authority of someone used to commanding rooms. "Yes, she is here for the party. This is Mama Adana Okafor, the groom's mother." The room went silent. Every single person turned to look at Chukwudi, whose face had gone through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, recognition, shock, and then something darker. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The comedian, still recording and missing the sudden tension, pushed his phone closer to Adana's face. "Ah, Mama, you are the groom's mother? But you are looking too fine. We were told. I mean, we expected." He trailed off, finally sensing that something was very wrong. Adana looked past the comedian, past all the staring men, directly at her son. Their eyes met across the room, and in that moment, 28 years of history hung between them like a curtain waiting to be torn down. Imagine this moment, a mother's eyes meeting her son's across a room filled with those who came to mock her. Have you ever witnessed a moment where truth arrived uninvited to a party of lies? What wisdom will you carry from this tale so far? Before anyone could speak, before Chukwudi could react, another voice rang out from the hallway behind Adana, a woman's voice, sharp with authority and confusion. "Chukwudi. Chukwudi, what is happening here? Who told me your mother was dead? Why did the hotel manager just congratulate me on my wonderful mother-in-law who just arrived?" Zainab, the bride, had arrived early. And she had questions. The banquet hall, which moments ago had been filled with music and laughter, now held the kind of silence that precedes thunder. Every eye turned from Adana to the doorway where Zainab stood, and then to Chukwudi, who looked like a man watching his carefully constructed world collapse in real time. Zainab Musa Ibrahim was beautiful in the way of women who had never known poverty. Her skin glowing with a kind of care that came from expensive creams and spa treatments, her hair perfectly styled in long braids adorned with gold accessories, her Ankara dress clearly custom-made and worth more than Adana had earned in 5 years. But it was her eyes that captured attention now, sharp, intelligent, and rapidly filling with the dangerous light of a woman who knew she had been lied to. She walked into the room with the confidence of someone used to being the most important person present, her high heels clicking against the marble floor like a judge's gavel. Behind her came 2 other women, bridesmaids, by their matching outfits, and an older man in traditional Hausa attire who could only be her father. "Chukwudi," Zainab repeated, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "I asked you a question. Why is the hotel manager congratulating me on my mother-in-law when you told me your mother died when you were 15? The comedian with the phone was still recording, his eyes wide with the realization that he had stumbled into something far more dramatic than the scripted mockery he'd been paid for. His colleague had also pulled out his phone. This was the kind of content that broke the internet, and journalistic instinct overrode whatever loyalty they might have felt to Chukwudi. Chukwudi's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. His friends, the 40 men who had come to witness what was supposed to be his mother's humiliation, shifted uncomfortably, suddenly understanding that they were now witnesses to something else entirely, his exposure. Dr. Efima, sensing that the moment needed careful handling, stepped forward and addressed Zainab with respect. "My dear, perhaps we should all sit down and talk about this calmly." "I am calm," Zainab interrupted, though her voice trembled with suppressed fury. "I am extremely calm. What I am not is patient with being made a fool of." She turned her laser focus back to Chukwudi. "You told me your mother died of malaria when you were a teenager. You told me you were raised by your wealthy uncle who sent you to the best schools. You showed me pictures of some man you claimed was this uncle. You created an entire history." She gestured wildly at Adana, who stood still and dignified despite being the center of this storm. "And now, on the eve of our wedding, a woman appears, a woman the hotel staff is treating like royalty, a woman dressed in full Igbo traditional attire, a woman who apparently is your mother." "Zainab, please, let me explain." Chukwudi finally found his voice, moving toward his bride with his hands outstretched in supplication. "Explain." Zainab's laugh was bitter. "Oh, I want to hear this explanation. I want to hear how a dead woman has been resurrected. Or perhaps you want to tell me that this is your father's sister. Another relative you forgot to mention in all our wedding planning." Adana had remained silent through this exchange, but now she spoke, her voice quiet but carrying clearly through the room. "I am his mother. I gave birth to him 29 years ago in Umunwanyi village. I am Adana Okafor, widow of Okafor Chukwemeka, and I am very much alive." Zainab turned to face Adana fully for the first time, and something in Adana's bearing, the dignity, the obvious pain beneath the regal exterior, seemed to reach through Zainab's anger to touch something deeper. "You're really his mother?" Zainab asked, her voice softer now, almost wondering. "Yes, my daughter." "And he told you I was?" "He told me you were." Zainab couldn't seem to finish either sentence, her mind clearly working through the implications. She turned back to Chukwudi, and her voice when she spoke again was dangerously quiet. "You didn't just lie to me about your mother being dead. You were ashamed of her. You were so ashamed that you killed her off in your story." "It's not like that," Chukwudi started, but the words sounded hollow even to his own ears. "Then what is it like?" Zainab's father spoke for the first time, his Hausa accented English heavy with disapproval. "Because from where I am standing, it looks like my daughter is about to marry a man who is ashamed of where he comes from. A man who lies about his own mother. And if a man can lie about something so fundamental, what else has he lied about?" One of Chukwudi's friends, a young man who had clearly had too much to drink and hadn't yet grasped the gravity of the situation, laughed nervously. "Guy, this is not how this was supposed to go. You said your mama was going to come here looking like a village woman, and we would." "Shut up. Shut up." Chukwudi whirled on his friend with such venom that the man actually stepped back, but the damage was done. "Wait." Zainab's eyes widened with new understanding. "You invited her here. You knew she was alive, you invited her here, and you were planning to, what? Humiliate her in front of your friends." The silence that followed was damning. Chukwudi's face confirmed everything. Dr. Efima decided it was time to speak. "Yes, Miss Zainab. He invited his mother, the woman who sacrificed everything for his education, who starved herself so he could eat, who borrowed money at crushing interest rates to pay his university fees. He invited her here so that he and his friends could mock her poverty. He hired comedians to interview her and make viral videos of her shame." She pulled out her phone and showed Zainab the screenshots of Chukwudi's messages, the same ones she had shown Adana days earlier. Zainab read them, her face going from angry to horrified to disgusted. "Pure comedy," she read aloud. "Wait till you see her. The look on her face when she realizes we're all laughing." She looked at Chukwudi like she was seeing him for the first time. "Who are you? Because the man I agreed to marry would never write something like this about anyone, let alone his own mother." "Zainab, please, you have to understand," Chukwudi was begging now, all pretense of the confident groom stripped away, revealing the desperate man beneath. "I just wanted to fit in. I wanted to be someone important. I didn't want people to know I came from nothing, from poverty, from me, Adana finished quietly. You didn't want people to know you came from me. For the first time since she had entered the room, Chukwudi really looked at his mother. Not the dismissive glance of earlier, but a true look. And what he saw seemed to stun him. This was not the broken, poor woman he had expected. This was a woman transformed, not by wealth but by dignity reclaimed. The coral beads at her neck, the wrapper that shimmered with gold thread, the way the other well-dressed women flanked her protectively, all of it told a story different from the one he had scripted in his mind. "Mama," he whispered, and for a moment, he was 7 years old again, looking at the one person in the world who had always been there. But Adana's eyes were not warm with maternal forgiveness. They were clear and assessing, looking at her son with the same frank honesty she had once used to evaluate yams in the market, seeing what was good and what had rotted. "Chukwudi," she said, and her voice carried the weight of 29 years. "When I carried you in my womb, I did not know if you would be a boy or girl, rich or poor, brilliant or simple. But I prayed to God and to the ancestors for one thing only, that you would be a person of character. That you would be someone I could be proud of, not because of what you achieved, but because of who you were." She paused, and the room held its collective breath. "I sold my mother's gold earrings, the only inheritance she left me, to send you to secondary school. I borrowed money at interest rates that would make a grown man weep, to send you to university. I worked on other people's farms until my hands bled, washed clothes until my back was bent, ate once a day for years, all so that you could have what I never had." Her voice didn't rise, but somehow it filled every corner of the room. "And I did these things gladly, my son. Gladly. Because that is what mothers do. We give not expecting return, we sacrifice not expecting gratitude, we love not expecting to be loved back with equal measure." Tears were now streaming down Chukwudi's face, but Adana was not finished. "But character, my son, that I expected. Honesty, I expected. The ability to look at the woman who gave you life and say, 'This is my mother, and I am proud of her,' that I expected. Not because I earned it with my sacrifices, but because it is the basic requirement of being human. Of being Igbo. Of being a child of the soil that raised you." She took a step toward him, and he flinched as though she had raised a hand to strike him. "You were ashamed of me. Ashamed of your village. Ashamed of the very poverty that refined you, that taught you to value education, that showed you the difference between want and plenty. You took those lessons and turned them into weapons against the woman who taught them to you." Zainab was crying now too, her carefully applied makeup running down her face. Her father had his arm around her, but his eyes were on Chukwudi with a kind of contempt reserved for men who fail the most basic tests of manhood. One of the bridesmaids whispered something to Zainab, but she shook her head. "No, I need to hear this." Adana continued, "You invited me here to humiliate me. You hired these young men with their cameras to make me a joke on the internet. You wanted your friends to see how far you had risen above your shameful beginnings." Now she gestured to the women around her, Dr. Efima and her network of accomplished professionals. "But God does not sleep, my son. And the ancestors are not blind. These women, strangers to me until 1 week ago, showed me more honor than my own son. They dressed me, transported me, paid my debts, and restored my dignity. Not because they owed me anything, but because they remembered their own mother's sacrifices." Dr. Ngozi stepped forward, unable to stay silent any longer. "I am a surgeon, Mr. Chukwudi. I make more money in a month than you probably make in 6. But my mother sold firewood to send me to school. Firewood. She carried it on her head for kilometers to the market. And when I graduated, the first thing I did was throw a party in her honor. I invited everyone, my colleagues, my friends, the hospital director, and I told them all about the firewood. Because my mother's sacrifice is not my shame. It is my glory." Dr. Chime spoke next. "I am a lawyer. I have argued cases before the Supreme Court. But my mother was a house help, a maid in someone else's home. She cleaned their toilets, washed their clothes, and endured their insults. And with the small money she made, she sent me to school. When I was called to the bar, she sat in the front row, and I introduced her to the Chief Justice himself. Because dignity is not in what you do, but in how you do it. My mother cleaned toilets with more dignity than you wear your expensive agbada." One by one, the women shared their stories, and with each testimony, Chukwudi seemed to shrink, his shame expanding to fill the space his pride had once occupied. But it was the comedian, the one who had been hired to mock Adana, who delivered the most unexpected blow. He stopped recording, lowered his phone, and looked at Chukwudi with something like pity. "Guy, I dey shame for you he said in pidgin English. "I no go lie. We come here to make content, to crack jokes about your village mama. But this." He gestured at Adana, at the women around her, at the whole situation. "This no be comedy. This na tragedy. You be the joke, not her. You see how your mama carry herself? You see the respect all these big women dey give her? That woman na queen, whether she get money or not." His colleague nodded. "Brothers, my own mama sell a cara for roadside to train me. If I ever try this kind thing, her ghost go haunt me even before she die." They both deleted their recordings, a gesture that spoke louder than words, and quietly left the room. Zainab had been silent through all of this, processing, thinking. Now she spoke, and her voice had the finality of a door closing. "Chukwudi, I cannot marry you tomorrow." "Zainab, no, please," he moved toward her, but she held up a hand. "I am not saying never. I am saying not tomorrow. Because the man I agreed to marry does not exist. You created a fiction, and I fell in love with a character in a story you wrote. But this," she pointed at the scene around them, "this is reality. And I need time to understand which version of you is real." Her father nodded approvingly. "My daughter is being more generous than you deserve. If it were up to me, we would leave now and never look back. A man who dishonours his mother will dishonour his wife. This is not Muslim teaching, not Christian teaching, this is human teaching. Please." Chukwudi was sobbing now, his expensive agbada crumpled where he had grabbed it in his fists, his carefully styled hair disheveled. "Please, Mama, Zainab, everyone, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was stupid, I was foolish, I was." "You were cruel," Adana said simply. "Stupidity I can forgive. Foolishness can be corrected. But cruelty, my son, cruelty requires more than tears. It requires transformation." She walked toward him, and he dropped to his knees before her, the way a child would kneel before an elder to beg forgiveness. The entire room watched as Adana looked down at her son, this man who had tried to erase her, to humiliate her, to make her a joke. "Do you remember," she said softly, "the lullaby I used to sing to you when you were small? When you had nightmares and would run to my mat in the middle of the night?" Chukwudi nodded, unable to speak. Adana began to sing, her voice cracked with age but still carrying the melody. "Noir babin kik mama. Mama gi nwer gi anya. Kayani na elili gi. Igarabu nwan ki koma. Baby child of mother. Your mother loves you. God is watching over you. You will be a good child." By the time she finished, there was not a dry eye in the room. Even Chukwudi's friends, men who had come to laugh, were wiping their faces, suddenly confronted with memories of their own mothers, their own villages, their own journeys from nothing to something. "I sang that song over you every night," Adana said, "believing that my prayers would make it true. That you would be a good child. A good man. And I still believe it can be true, Chukwudi. But not the man you are today. The man you are today needs to die. And the man you are meant to be needs to be born." She placed her hand on his head, the traditional gesture of a mother's blessing, but her words were not soft. "I forgive you because that is what mothers do. But my forgiveness does not erase your consequences. That is what justice does. You wanted to humiliate me, but instead, you have humiliated yourself. You wanted to erase me, but instead, you have been exposed. The ancestors have turned your weapon back upon you." Dr. Efima stepped forward. "We should go, Mama. You've said what needed to be said." But before they could leave, Zainab spoke again, this time addressing Adana directly. "Mama, may I call you Mama?" Adana nodded, seeing in this young woman's eyes a quality she recognized, the ability to see truth and respond to it. "Mama, I want you to know that I am not angry with you. I am angry with your son for his deception, but you have shown me what real strength looks like. My own mother died when I was young, and my father remarried. My stepmother is kind, but she does not." Zainab struggled with the words. "She does not carry the scars of sacrifice," Adana finished gently. "Because she did not have to. And that is not a fault, my daughter. But those of us who bear these scars, we recognize each other, yes." Zainab nodded, tears flowing freely now. I grew up with money, but I also grew up with a hole in my heart where my mother should have been. When Chukwudi told me his mother was dead, I thought we shared that wound. I thought it was something that bonded us. But he lied. He had a mother, a strong, dignified, beautiful mother, and he threw her away like garbage. She turned to Chukwudi, who was still on his knees. If we are to have any future, you need to understand something. I don't need a rich husband. My father is rich enough for both of us. What I needed was a husband of character, a man who could stand beside me and say, "This is who I am, where I come from, and I am not ashamed." She paused, then delivered the final blow. But that is not you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And I will not marry a maybe. Zainab's father began ushering his daughter and her bridesmaids toward the door. As they passed Adana, Zainab stopped and did something that shocked everyone in the room. She knelt briefly before Adana, in the traditional gesture of respect. "Mama, whether I marry your son or not, I want you to know that you have raised the bar for the kind of mother I hope to be one day. Thank you for showing me what true dignity looks like." Adana placed her hand on Zainab's head in blessing. "Go well, daughter. And whatever you decide, know that your mother in heaven is proud of the woman you are becoming. Character recognizes character, regardless of what the children we raised choose to do." After Zainab and her family left, the banquet hall cleared rapidly. Chukwudi's friends slipped away one by one, unable to meet anyone's eyes, suddenly very interested in their phones or the floor or anywhere but the broken man still kneeling before his mother. Soon, only Adana, the women of her support network, and Chukwudi remained. Dr. Efima touched Adana's shoulder gently. "Mama, we can go whenever you're ready." But Adana shook her head. "Give me a moment alone with my son." Unexpected blow. He stopped recording, lowered his phone, and looked at Chukwudi with something like pity. "Guy, I dey shame for you he said in pidgin English. "I no go lie. We come here to make content, to crack jokes about your village mama. But this." He gestured at Adana, at the women around her, at the whole situation. "This no be comedy. This na tragedy. You be the joke, not her. You see how your mama carry herself? You see the respect all these big women dey give her? That woman na queen, whether she get money or not." His colleague nodded. "Brothers, my own mama sell a kara for roadside to train me. If I ever try this kind thing, her ghost go haunt me even before she die." They both deleted their recordings, a gesture that spoke louder than words, and quietly left the room. Zainab had been silent through all of this, processing, thinking. Now she spoke, and her voice had the finality of a door closing. "Chukwudi, I cannot marry you tomorrow." "Zainab, no, please," he moved toward her, but she held up a hand. "I am not saying never. I am saying not tomorrow. Because the man I agreed to marry does not exist. You created a fiction, and I fell in love with a character in a story you wrote. But this," she pointed at the scene around them, "this is reality. And I need time to understand which version of you is real." Her father nodded approvingly. "My daughter is being more generous than you deserve. If it were up to me, we would leave now and never look back. A man who dishonours his mother will dishonour his wife. This is not Muslim teaching, not Christian teaching, this is human teaching. Please." Chukwudi was sobbing now, his expensive agbada crumpled where he had grabbed it in his fists, his carefully styled hair disheveled. "Please, Mama, Zainab, everyone, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was stupid, I was foolish, I was." "You were cruel," Adana said simply. "Stupidity I can forgive. Foolishness can be corrected. But cruelty, my son, cruelty requires more than tears. It requires transformation." She walked toward him, and he dropped to his knees before her, the way a child would kneel before an elder to beg forgiveness. The entire room watched as Adana looked down at her son, this man who had tried to erase her, to humiliate her, to make her a joke. "Do you remember," she said softly, "the lullaby I used to sing to you when you were small? When you had nightmares and would run to my mat in the middle of the night?" Chukwudi nodded, unable to speak. Adana began to sing, her voice cracked with age but still carrying the melody. "Noir babin kik mama. Mama gi nwer gi enanya. Kayani na elili gi. Igarabu nwan kikoma. Baby child of mother. Your mother loves you. God is watching over you. You will be a good child." By the time she finished, there was not a dry eye in the room. Even Chukwudi's friends, men who had come to laugh, were wiping their faces, suddenly confronted with memories of their own mothers, their own villages, their own journeys from nothing to something. I sang that song over you every night, Adana said, believing that my prayers would make it true. That you would be a good child. A good man. And I still believe it can be true, Chukwudi. But not the man you are today. The man you are today needs to die. And the man you are meant to be needs to be born. She placed her hand on his head, the traditional gesture of a mother's blessing, but her words were not soft. I forgive you because that is what mothers do. But my forgiveness does not erase your consequences. That is what justice does. You wanted to humiliate me, but instead, you have humiliated yourself. You wanted to erase me, but instead, you have been exposed. The ancestors have turned your weapon back upon you. Dr. Efima stepped forward. We should go, Mama. You've said what needed to be said. But before they could leave, Zainab spoke again, this time addressing Adana directly. Mama. May I call you Mama? Adana nodded, seeing in this young woman's eyes a quality she recognized, the ability to see truth and respond to it. Mama, I want you to know that I am not angry with you. I am angry with your son for his deception, but you have shown me what real strength looks like. My own mother died when I was young, and my father remarried. My stepmother is kind, but she does not. Zainab struggled with the words. She does not carry the scars of sacrifice, Adana finished gently. Because she did not have to. And that is not a fault, my daughter. But those of us who bear these scars, we recognize each other, yes. Zainab nodded, tears flowing freely now. I grew up with money, but I also grew up with a hole in my heart where my mother should have been. When Chukwudi told me his mother was dead, I thought we shared that wound. I thought it was something that bonded us. But he lied. He had a mother, a strong, dignified, beautiful mother, and he threw her away like garbage. She turned to Chukwudi, who was still on his knees. If we are to have any future, you need to understand something. I don't need a rich husband. My father is rich enough for both of us. What I needed was a husband of character, a man who could stand beside me and say, this is who I am, where I come from, and I am not ashamed. She paused, then delivered the final blow. But that is not you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And I will not marry a maybe. Zainab's father began ushering his daughter and her bridesmaids toward the door. As they passed Adana, Zainab stopped and did something that shocked everyone in the room. She knelt briefly before Adana, in the traditional gesture of respect. Mama, whether I marry your son or not, I want you to know that you have raised the bar for the kind of mother I hope to be one day. Thank you for showing me what true dignity looks like. Adana placed her hand on Zainab's head in blessing. Go well, daughter. And whatever you decide, know that your mother in heaven is proud of the woman you are becoming. Character recognizes character, regardless of what the children we raised choose to do. After Zainab and her family left, the banquet hall cleared rapidly. Chukwudi's friends slipped away one by one, unable to meet anyone's eyes, suddenly very interested in their phones or the floor or anywhere but the broken man still kneeling before his mother. Soon, only Adana, the women of her support network, and Chukwudi remained. Dr. Efima touched Adana's shoulder gently. Mama, we can go whenever you're ready. But Adana shook her head. Give me a moment alone with my son. The women exchanged glances but nodded, filing out to wait in the hallway. The door closed, leaving mother and son alone in the vast, silent banquet hall decorated for a celebration that would never happen. Chukwudi finally looked up at his mother, his face ravaged by tears and shame. Mama, I don't know how to fix this. You can't, Adana said simply. Not today. Maybe not for a long time. The trust you broke, the lies you told, the cruelty you planned, these things have consequences that sorry cannot immediately erase. Then what do I do? Adana sat down in one of the chairs, suddenly feeling every one of her years. You start by telling the truth. To yourself first, then to others. You were ashamed of being poor, ashamed of the village, ashamed of me. But shame, my son, is like trying to bury a yam. It will grow anyway, and it will grow twisted and bitter. She looked at him with eyes that had seen too much suffering to be fooled by quick repentance. You need to go back, Chukwudi. Not physically, though that too would be good. But mentally, spiritually. Go back to the boy you were before the world taught you that poverty was shame and wealth was honor. Find that boy who used to tell me I was the most beautiful woman in the world. Find him and ask him what happened. When did you stop seeing with his eyes and start seeing with the eyes of people who judge worth by bank accounts? I don't know if I can, Chukwudi whispered. Then you will lose everything, Adana said bluntly. You have already lost your bride. You have lost your friends' respect. Even now they are probably in group chats talking about what happened here. You have lost your reputation. The only question is whether you will lose yourself completely or find yourself again. She stood up slowly, her joints protesting. I am going back to the village tomorrow. My debts are paid, not by you, but by strangers who showed more filial care than my own son. My compound is still small, my life is still simple, but it is honest. And I will sleep well there, because my head touches the pillow with a clear conscience. Mama, don't go. Please. Stay. Let me make it up to you. Adana smiled sadly. Make it up to me? My son, you cannot make up 29 years in a day. If you truly want to honor me, it will take years of changed behavior, not hours of tears. And I am too old to wait around while you figure out if you mean your repentance or if this is just another performance. She walked to the door, then paused and turned back. But know this, when you are ready, truly ready, to be the man your father would have been proud of, when you are ready to face your village with honesty rather than shame, when you are ready to introduce me to your world as your mother and not your secret, then, Chukwudi, then I will be here. Because that is what mothers do. We wait. We hope. We never stop believing that the child we prayed over can still emerge from the man who disappointed us. I love you, Mama, Chukwudi choked out. I know, Adana replied. You just love your pride more. And until that changes, your love is just a word without weight. She opened the door and walked out, leaving her son kneeling in the empty banquet hall surrounded by the remnants of a party that never was and a wedding that might never be. As Adana and the women drove away from the hotel, Dr. Efima's phone rang. It was her nephew again, his voice urgent. Auntie, you need to see this. Chukwudi just posted something on social media. It's going viral. In minutes, it's already been shared thousands of times. Either this is the beginning of his redemption, or it's his complete destruction. I can't tell which. The white Hummer limousine glided through Port Harcourt's evening traffic, but inside, the atmosphere was tense with anticipation. Dr. Efima held her phone, her face illuminated by its glow, while the other women leaned in to see what had caused such urgency in her nephew's voice. Adana sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, the coral beads at her neck catching the passing streetlights. She felt hollowed out, like a clay pot that had been emptied of everything it once held. She had confronted her son. She had spoken her truth. She had walked away with her dignity intact. But why, then, did victory feel so much like grief? Mama, Dr. Efima said softly, turning the phone toward her. Your son has posted something. Do you want to see it, or would you rather wait? Show me, Adana said, though her voice trembled slightly. I have faced him in person. I can face his words on a screen. The post was a video. In it, Chukwudi sat in what appeared to be his hotel room, still wearing his rumpled agbada, his eyes red and swollen from crying. The expensive furnishings behind him seemed to mock his broken state. He looked directly into the camera, and when he spoke, his voice was raw with emotion. My name is Chukwudi Okafor, and I am the son of Adana Okafor of Umunwani village. For years, I have told people my mother was dead. I lied. I lied because I was ashamed of being poor, ashamed of my village, ashamed of the woman who sacrificed everything so that I could become the man sitting before you now. He paused, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. Today was supposed to be my bachelor party. I had planned it as a cruel joke. I invited my mother, my living mother, so that my friends and I could mock her poverty, make videos of her confusion, laugh at the village woman who raised me. I hired comedians to humiliate her. I prepared my friends to witness what I thought would be my final separation from my shameful past. The camera shook slightly as his hands trembled. But God has a way of exposing wickedness. My mother arrived, not as the broken woman I expected, but as the queen she has always been. Strangers honored her more than her own son did. And my bride, my former bride, saw me for what I truly am, a man who achieved success by stepping on the woman who lifted me up. His voice broke completely. Mama, if you're watching this, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know sorry is just a word that cannot undo the years of neglect, the lies I told, the cruelty I planned. But I want the world to know, my mother, Adana Okafor, is the strongest, most dignified woman I have ever known. She sold her mother's jewelry to send me to school. She borrowed money at rates that would crush most people. She worked until her hands bled. She starved so I could eat. And I repaid her by trying to erase her from my story. He looked directly into the camera, tears streaming down his face. To anyone watching this who has a mother who struggled for you, who sacrificed for you, who gave up her own dreams so you could chase yours, don't be like me. Don't wait until you've lost everything to realize what you had. Honor her now. Love her now. Be proud of her now. Because the shame is not in where you come from. The shame is in forgetting who brought you there. The video ended with Chukwudi's face frozen in a frame of pure anguish, and below it, the caption read, "I have cancelled my wedding. Not because my bride left me, but because I am not fit to be anyone's husband until I learn to be my mother's son again. If you see this, Mama, know that I love you. And if love means anything, it must mean change. I am going to change. Even if it takes the rest of my life." The silence in the car was profound. Dr. Chine was crying openly. Amora had her hand over her mouth. Dr. Ngozi was shaking her head slowly, whether in disbelief or approval, it was hard to tell. The post has over 50,000 shares already, Dr. Ifima's nephew had texted. People are calling him everything from brave to manipulative. But auntie, the comments, some of them are from other children confessing their own shame about their poor parents. It's like he opened a wound in the nation's conscience. Adana stared at the phone screen long after the video ended. This was her son, the baby she had carried, the boy she had raised, the man who had broken her heart. Which version was real? The cruel one who had planned her humiliation, or this broken one begging for redemption? What are you thinking, Mama? Dr. Ifima asked gently. I am thinking, Adana said slowly, that my son has learned to perform. The question is whether this is another performance or the beginning of truth. Words are easy, especially words said in the moment of consequence. It is the words that follow, the actions that come after the cameras stop recording, those are the ones that matter. She handed the phone back. Let us go home. To Moonwanyi. Dr. Ifima asked. Yes. I want to sleep in my own compound tonight, under my own roof. I want to wake up to the sound of my own roosters and the smell of my own earth. Whatever happens next in my son's life, he must find his way without me watching. I have done all I can do. They arrived in Moonwanyi late that night, but the village was still awake. News had spread, in the mysterious way that news spreads in villages, faster than any internet connection, that Adana had confronted her son, that she had arrived at his party dressed like royalty, that the son's wickedness had been exposed. When the Hummer pulled into the village, people emerged from their compounds with lanterns and flashlights, gathering to welcome her home. Old Maman Kairu was there, and Papa Obi with his walking stick, and dozens of others who had watched Adana struggle all these years. Our daughter has returned, they called out in Igbo. Adana, the warrior. Woman of strength. Mama Neka, the old diviner, stood at the entrance to Adana's compound, her face serene in the lamplight. I told you, she said as Adana approached. I told you the ancestors were watching. Did they not turn the tables beautifully? Adana embraced the old woman, feeling the frail bones beneath papery skin, smelling the familiar scent of herbs and smoke that always clung to Mama Neka. They did, Mama. They did. The women from Port Harcourt, Dr. Ifima and her network, were welcomed like honored guests. The village women brought food despite the late hour: jollof rice, fried plantains, chicken stew. Someone had even tapped palm wine, and the men were already passing around a calabash. An impromptu celebration erupted. The young men brought out drums, and the rhythms filled the night air. Women danced, their wrappers swirling, their voices raised in songs that had been sung by their grandmothers and would be sung by their granddaughters. Dr. Ifima watched in wonder as village and city merged in celebration. This, she said to her colleagues, this is what we've lost in the cities. This sense of community, of shared joy and shared sorrow. Dr. Ngozi nodded. My mother used to tell me about nights like this in her village. I never understood what she meant until now. As the celebration continued, Adana found herself sitting with Mama Neka away from the crowd, both women watching the dancing with the comfortable silence of old friends. Your son's video is making people talk, Mama Necker said. She didn't have a smartphone herself, but her grandchildren had shown her. Some say he is truly sorry. Others say he is only sorry he was caught. What do you say? Adana was quiet for a long moment, watching the flames of the bonfire someone had built. I say it is not for me to judge his heart. I can only see his actions. And right now, his actions are still too fresh, too new. A yam must be tested with a knife to know if it is cooked. Give him time. Let us see if he remains soft when the fire is removed. Wise words, Mama Necker agreed. But I think something broke in him today. Something that needed to break. Pride is like a bone that heals wrong. Sometimes it must be broken again to heal correctly. The old woman pulled out a kola nut and split it, offering half to Adana. They chewed in silence, the bitter taste familiar and grounding. The bride, Adana said after a while. Zainab. I liked her. She has sense. She does, Mama Necker confirmed. And she has a good heart. Did you see how she knelt before you? That girl was raised with values, even in her wealth. Do you think they will marry? Mama Necker closed her eyes, and Adana knew she was consulting whatever spirits guided her sight. When she opened them again, she smiled mysteriously. That story is not yet finished being written. But I see, yes, I see possibility. If the boy can become a man. If the man can become what the boy once promised to be. The next morning, Adana woke in her own bed, in her own compound, to the familiar sounds of village life. For a moment, the events of the previous day seemed like a dream. The Hummer, the hotel, the confrontation, all of it too surreal to be real. But then she saw the George wrapper hanging on her wall, the coral beads carefully arranged on her small table, and she knew it had all happened. She had faced her son. She had spoken her truth. And she had walked away with her dignity. There was a commotion outside her compound. Adana wrapped her cloth around herself and went to investigate. A crowd had gathered, and in the center stood a young man with a motorcycle, a courier. Mama Adana Okafor, he called out. I am she. He handed her a large envelope and a bouquet of flowers. Delivery from Port Harcourt, Ma. The flowers were beautiful, expensive roses and lilies, the kind that didn't grow in Umunwani. The card attached read simply, "Thank you for showing me what I should have seen all along. Zainab." Inside the envelope was a letter, written in elegant handwriting. Dear Mama Adana, I could not sleep last night after everything that happened. I kept thinking about you, about the strength you showed, about the dignity you maintained even when your own son tried to strip it from you. I am writing to tell you that I have not completely closed the door on Chukwudi. But I have told him that if we are to have any future, certain things must change. He must go back to his village. He must stand before his community and acknowledge where he comes from. He must work to restore his relationship with you, not through grand gestures, but through consistent, humble action. Most importantly, I told him he must become the kind of man who could raise children who would never be ashamed of their parents, no matter what. I don't know if he can do these things. But I wanted you to know that I am giving him a chance, not because he deserves it, but because I saw in your eyes yesterday that despite everything, you have not given up on him completely. And if a mother who suffered as you did can still hold hope, then perhaps I can too. Whether Chukwudi and I marry or not, I would be honored to know you. My own mother is gone, and my stepmother, kind as she is, does not fill that space. If you would permit it, I would like to visit you sometimes. To learn from you. To sit with you and hear your stories. With deepest respect. Zainab. Adana read the letter 3 times, her eyes blurring with tears by the third reading. This girl, this woman, had a heart of gold. She understood something that many people never learned, that true family is not just about blood, but about recognition, about respect, about the choice to honor. Good news, Mama. Mama Necker had appeared, as she often did, at exactly the right moment. A young woman with an old soul, Adana said, handing her the letter. She wants to give my son another chance. And you? Do you want him to have another chance? Adana thought about this. Did she? Part of her wanted to say no, to protect her heart from further disappointment. But another part, the part that had sung lullabies over sleeping child, the part that had prayed over him every day, the part that was eternally, irrevocably mother, that part whispered, yes. I want him to have the chance to earn another chance, she said finally. There is a difference. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks during which Adana returned to her normal life, farming, trading in the market, attending village meetings. The women from Port Harcourt stayed in touch, calling regularly, even visiting once more to bring supplies and just to sit with her. Dr. Efima's network had begun a foundation called Honoring Mothers, specifically designed to help struggling single mothers with their children's education and to celebrate maternal sacrifice. Adana's story had become the catalyst, but they were careful not to exploit her pain for publicity. "We do this work quietly," Dr. Efima explained. "The way mothers work, quietly, without fanfare, without expectation of recognition." Chukwudi's video had indeed gone viral. It sparked a national conversation about intergenerational shame, about children of privilege forgetting their roots, about the cost of success when it comes at the expense of family. Think pieces were written in newspapers. Pastors preached sermons about honoring parents. Imams spoke about filial duty. But in Umunwanyi, life continued at its own pace, unbothered by the internet's rapid-fire discourse. Until one afternoon, exactly 21 days after the confrontation, when a taxi pulled up to Adana's compound. Chukwudi stepped out. He was dressed simply, not in the expensive agbada of before, but in a plain shirt and trousers. No gold watch. No heavy chain. He carried a small bag and his face bore the marks of a man who had not been sleeping well. The village children, who had been playing nearby, stopped to stare. Word spread quickly, "Mama Adana's son has come." The one from the video. By the time Chukwudi reached his mother's compound, a small crowd had gathered at a respectful distance. Everyone wanted to see what would happen, but no one wanted to intrude. Adana was pounding yam in her compound when she looked up and saw him. Their eyes met, and for a long moment, neither spoke. Then Chukwudi did something that shocked everyone watching. He removed his shoes, knelt down in the red dust of the compound, and prostrated himself completely, the traditional Igbo gesture of profound respect and apology, reserved for the gravest of situations. "Mama," his voice was muffled against the ground, "I have come home. Not to visit. Not to perform. But to stay. To learn again how to be your son." Adana set down her pestle slowly. Every eye in the village was on her now, waiting to see what she would do. Would she forgive him immediately? Would she reject him? Would she make him suffer as he had made her suffer? She walked over to where he lay and stood looking down at him. When she spoke, her voice was loud enough for the gathered crowd to hear, because this was not just a private moment. This was a community moment, a teaching moment. "Chukwudi, stand up." He rose to his feet, dust clinging to his clothes and skin, his eyes not quite able to meet hers. "You say you have come home. But this is not your home anymore. You left it years ago, not in body but in spirit. You cannot simply return and expect to find everything as it was." His face crumpled with despair, but Adana held up her hand. "However," she continued, "our people say, the child who says his mother will not sleep, he too shall know sleepless nights. You have known sleepless nights now, have you not?" "Yes, Mama. Every night since." "Then perhaps you are ready to learn what you should have known all along. Home is not a place you come from. It is a place you carry inside you. It is in your values, your character, your treatment of those who raised you. If you have come to rebuild that home inside yourself, then you may stay. But if you have come seeking quick forgiveness so you can return to your comfortable life in Port Harcourt, then you should leave now." "I have quit my job," Chukwudi said quietly. "I told them I need 6 months to find myself again. To remember who I am." They were not happy, but they understood. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. He had quit his job, the prestigious oil company position that had been the source of his pride. "I want to stay here," he continued. "I want to work in the farm with you. I want to help you in the market. I want to do all the things I should have been doing all these years. I want to learn again what it means to work with your hands, to struggle, to understand what you went through for me." Mama Neka stepped forward from the crowd. "Adana, may I speak?" "Please, Mama." The old woman approached Chukwudi, studying him with eyes that seemed to see through flesh to spirit. "You know what we do in this village when a child has truly transgressed? When they have broken the sacred bond between parent and child?" Chukwudi shook his head. "We give them to the community. Not as punishment, but as re-education. You will not just work for your mother. You will work for all of us. You will farm for the widow who has no sons. You will fetch water for the old woman whose back is bent. You will help build the fence for the man whose hands shake with age. You will learn that honor is not in what you have, but in what you give. She turned to the crowd. Is this acceptable to the village? Yes, came the chorus of voices. And if this young man fails, if he runs back to his comfortable life after 1 week of blisters and backache, what then? Then he will know true shame. Papa Obi called out. Not the shame he brought on himself in Port Harcourt, but the shame of breaking a village's trust. Chukwudi's face showed fear, but also determination. I accept. I will do whatever is required of me. Adana felt something shift in her chest. This was not the arrogant son who had sent her that invitation. This was not even the broken man from the video. This was someone else, someone uncertain, humbled, willing. Whether this person would last, she did not know. But it was a beginning. You may stay, she said quietly. But you will sleep in the boys' quarters. She pointed to the small structure that had once been Chukwudi's childhood room, barely more than a shed, not in comfort, but as you did when you were young and we had nothing. You will wake when the rooster crows. You will work until sunset. And you will learn that the hands that provide food are more honorable than the hands that only know computer keyboards. Yes, Mama. And one more thing. Adana's voice hardened slightly. You will write a letter, a real letter, with pen and paper, not typed on your phone, to every person you lied to about me. Your colleagues, your friends, everyone who believed I was dead. You will tell them the truth. All of it. The poverty, the sacrifice, the cruelty you planned. Everything. And you will send me copies of these letters so I know you have done it. This was perhaps the hardest requirement, and Chukwudi's face showed it. To confess to everyone, to strip away the last vestiges of his carefully constructed image, it was a kind of death. I will do it, he whispered. The crowd began to disperse, satisfied that justice was being served and that the drama would continue to unfold over weeks and months, giving them plenty to discuss at future gatherings. Adana turned back to her yam pounding, but after a moment, she looked over her shoulder at her son, who stood awkwardly in the compound, looking lost. Well, she said. Are you going to stand there like a statue, or are you going to help me pound this yam? Your city muscles need to remember what real work feels like. A small smile touched Chukwudi's lips, the first genuine smile she had seen from him in years. He walked over, took the pestle from her hands, and began to pound. His technique was rusty, his rhythm off, but he was trying. And sometimes, Adana thought, watching him work, trying is where redemption begins. The next 6 months transformed Umunwanyi in unexpected ways. Chukwudi's presence, and more importantly, his humility, became a teaching story that parents told their children. You see that young man working in Mama Ekan's farm, they would say. He used to be a big man in the city with a big job and plenty of money. But he learned the hard way that success without character is like a house without foundation. Now he is learning again. True to his word, Chukwudi worked. And it was not the performative work of someone seeking praise, but the hard, unglamorous work of daily survival. He woke at dawn and helped his mother prepare her farm for planting season. His hands, soft from years of office work, developed blisters that burst and reformed as calluses. His back, accustomed to air-conditioned comfort, learned again the ache of bending over crops under the merciless sun. But more than the physical labor, Chukwudi worked on himself. He sat with the elders and listened to their stories. He learned proverbs he had forgotten or never truly understood. He attended village meetings and heard disputes settled with wisdom rather than law degrees. He helped Maman Kairu rebuild her chicken coop when it collapsed. He carried water for old Papa Obi when the man's arthritis flared. He taught the village children mathematics in the evenings, using sticks in the sand when they had no proper materials. And every week, without fail, he wrote letters, painful, honest letters confessing his lies and his cruelty. He wrote to his former colleagues at the oil company. He wrote to his university friends. He wrote to distant relatives who had believed the story of his wealthy upbringing. Each letter was a small death of pride, and each one brought him closer to rebirth. Dr. Efima and her network visited twice during this period, watching with satisfaction as their intervention bore fruit. This is what accountability looks like, Dr. Chine observed, watching Chukwudi help his mother carry vegetables to market. Not just saying sorry, but living differently. But the most significant visitor came 3 months into Chukwudi's village stay. Zainab arrived on a Saturday morning, dressed simply in jeans and a modest blouse, her hair covered with a colorful scarf. She had not announced her coming, wanting to see the reality rather than a prepared performance. What she found was Chukwudi in his mother's compound, covered in mud from clearing the drainage around the house, laughing with some village children who were helping by mostly getting in the way. Chukwudi, one of the children was saying, "Tell us again about the big city. Tell us about the tall buildings that touch the sky." "Ah, the tall buildings," Chukwudi said, sitting back on his heels. "Yes, they are impressive. But you know what is more impressive? This." He gestured to the neat rows of cassava plants behind them. "These crops that feed people. These crops that your mothers and fathers know how to grow. In the city, we have tall buildings, yes. But if all the farmers stopped farming, those buildings would be full of hungry people." It was such a simple truth, but spoken with the kind of conviction that comes from lived experience rather than theoretical knowledge. "Chukwudi," Zainab called softly. He looked up, and the shock on his face was almost comical. He scrambled to his feet, suddenly aware of how he must look, mud-splattered, sweaty, his hair uncombed, his clothes the simple wrapper and t-shirt of a village farmer. "Zainab? What are you doing here?" "I came to see if the man in the video was real or if he was just another performance," she said honestly. "I came to see if you meant what you said." The children, sensing adult business, scattered with giggles and whispers. "I meant it," Chukwudi said quietly. "I am trying, Zainab. Every day I am trying to become the man I should have been all along." They stood looking at each other across the compound, and the air between them held all the weight of what had been broken and what might possibly be rebuilt. Adana emerged from her house at that moment, saw Zainab, and her face broke into a warm smile. "My daughter. You have come." Zainab turned and immediately showed the proper respect, bowing slightly. "Mama, I hope it is okay that I came unannounced." "Okay? It is more than okay. Come inside. You must be tired from the journey. Chukwudi, go and fetch water for our guest. And clean yourself before you come inside. You look like you've been wrestling with the earth." As Chukwudi hurried to obey, Zainab followed Adana into the small house. It was humble, so much more humble than anything in Zainab's experience. The walls were still mud, though someone had obviously worked to patch the cracks. The furniture was minimal and worn. But it was clean, and there was a warmth to it that no amount of money could buy. "Sit, my daughter," Adana said, gesturing to her best chair. "Tell me, how is your father? How is your family?" "They are well, Mama. My father, he wanted you to know that he was impressed by your dignity. He said any woman who could raise a son, watch that son betray her, and still stand tall, that woman comes from strong ancestral stock." Adana smiled. "Your father is a wise man. I see where you get your good sense." They talked for a while about small things, Zainab's work, the village, the weather. But eventually, Zainab asked the question that had brought her here. "Mama, has he changed? Really changed? Or is this just another mask he's wearing?" Adana was quiet for a moment, considering. "You want the truth?" "Always." "The truth is I don't know yet. 3 months is not enough time to erase 29 years of wrong thinking. But I will tell you what I see. I see effort. I see humility. I see a man who wakes up every morning and chooses difficulty over comfort. Is it permanent? Only time will tell. But it is real, at least for now." She leaned forward, taking Zainab's hands in her own work-worn ones. "But my daughter, you must not marry potential. You must not marry hope. If you choose to give him another chance, it must be because you see the man he is becoming, not the man you wish he would become. Do you understand?" "I do," Zainab said softly. "That's why I came. I needed to see with my own eyes." Chukwudi returned then, clean and nervous, carrying a tray with water and some biscuits that Adana had purchased for special occasions. "Zainab," he said, setting down the tray, "I want to show you something. Will you walk with me?" She looked to Adana, who nodded permission. They walked through the village together, Chukwudi pointing out the places of his childhood, the stream where he used to fetch water, the tree he climbed when he wanted to be alone, the spot where his father was buried. "I had forgotten all of this," he said quietly. "Or maybe I didn't forget. Maybe I just chose not to remember because remembering meant acknowledging what I had become." They stopped at the village square, where a new structure was being built, a community center that Chukwudi had been helping to construct. We're building this together, he explained. The young men, the old men, everyone contributing. When it's finished, it will be a place for village meetings, for the children to study, for gatherings. I donated the money for the materials, but I'm also here laying bricks with my own hands. He showed her his hands, rough and scarred from work. These hands used to only know keyboards and handshakes and holding expensive drinks. Now they know useful things. They know how to plant, how to build, how to carry burdens. Why are you doing this? Zainab asked. Is it for me? To win me back? No, Chukwudi said, and the honesty in his voice was stark. I'm doing this because I need to. Because I was lost, Zainab. I had achieved everything I thought I wanted, but I had lost myself completely. This, he gestured at the village around them, this is me finding my way back. Whether you're part of my future or not, I need to do this. For me. For my mother. For the man I want to be. It was the right answer. Zainab felt something in her chest loosen slightly. They talked for hours, sitting under a mango tree as the sun moved across the sky. Chukwudi told her about the letters he'd written, about the responses he'd received, some forgiving, some cutting, some simply confused. He told her about the work he was doing, not just physical but spiritual, trying to understand how he had become someone he didn't recognize. I've been seeing the village pastor for counseling, he admitted. Talking about pride, about shame, about what it means to honor your parents. And I've been sitting with the elders, learning our culture again, the parts one dismissed as old-fashioned and backward. He looked at her directly. I'm not going to ask you to marry me again. Not now. Maybe not for a long time. Because the man who proposed to you wasn't worthy of you, and I need to become worthy before I can even think about asking again. What if you become worthy and I've moved on? Zainab asked softly. Then I will be sad, Chukwudi said simply. But I will also be grateful that the process of trying to deserve you made me into a better man, even if that man ends up alone. Some lessons are worth learning regardless of the outcome. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Zainab made her decision. I'm not promising marriage, she said. I'm not even promising that we'll get back together. But I'm promising this, I will wait. I will watch. I will visit and see if this man you're becoming is someone I can build a life with. And in 6 months, when your time here is finished, we will talk again. Honestly and openly. And we will see where we stand. It was not a fairy tale ending, but it was something better. It was a realistic hope. The 6 months came to an end on a day that started like any other. Chukwudi woke before dawn, helped his mother prepare breakfast, and headed to the farm for the morning's work. But when he returned at midday, he found his compound transformed. The village had gathered, elders, children, men, women, all dressed in their best wrappers and shirts. Mama Neka stood in the center, looking ancient and powerful, with a kola nut in her hands. Chukwudi Okafor, she called out in her quavering voice that somehow carried to every corner. Come forward. Confused, he obeyed. 6 months ago, Mama Neka said, this village took you back as a child who needed to be retaught. You were a son who had forgotten his mother, a man who had forgotten his village, a person who had forgotten himself. Do you remember? Yes, Mama, Chukwudi said, his voice thick with emotion. And now, 6 months later, this village has watched you. We have seen you work in the sun and rain. We have seen you carry water for the elderly and teach the young. We have seen you rebuild not just our community center, but your own character. And we have decided something. She held up the kola nut, the sacred seed used in ceremonies of significance. We have decided that you are no longer a child being punished, but a son being welcomed. You are no longer a stranger in your own village, but a true son of Umunwanyi. You have earned back what you threw away, our respect, our trust, and the right to call this place home. The crowd erupted in cheers and ululation. Someone began drumming, and the celebration that had been prepared in secret burst forth in full color. Chukwudi was overwhelmed, tears streaming down his face as elder after elder came forward to embrace him, to offer blessings, to welcome him back into the fold. But it was his mother's embrace that meant the most. My son, Adana whispered into his ear as she held him, you have finally come home. Not to the compound, but to yourself. And that is the only homecoming that truly matters. The celebration lasted into the night. Food appeared from every compound, jollof rice, egusi soup, pounded yam, peppered goat meat, palm wine. The village children danced. The young men displayed their acrobatic skills. The women sang songs of prodigal sons who found their way back. And in the middle of it all, Chukwudi looked around at these people. His people, the ones he had been ashamed of, and felt a fullness in his chest that all his success in Port Harcourt had never provided. Dr. Efima and her network had come for the celebration, bringing Zainab with them. When Chukwudi saw her, his heart leaped, but he didn't rush to her. He finished his duties as a member of the village, helping to serve the elders, ensuring everyone had food, playing his part in the community celebration. Only when there was a pause in the festivities did he approach her. "You came," he said simply. "I promised I would," Zainab replied. 6 months. I said I would wait and watch. And? What did you see? Zainab smiled, and it was a smile full of warmth and something that looked like it might be love. "I saw a man die and a better man rise from his ashes. I saw someone learn that going back is sometimes the only way to move forward. I saw a son remember how to honor his mother." She took his hand, and the gesture sent a ripple of knowing glances through the crowd. "I saw someone I could maybe build a life with," she continued. "If he continues on this path. If he remembers these lessons even when he returns to the city. If he can be this man, this honest, humble, hard-working man, in Port Harcourt just as much as in Umunwanyi. I will," Chukwudi promised. "But not immediately. I've been thinking. I want to stay longer. Maybe not in the village full-time, but I want to split my time. I want to start a business here, something that employs village youth, that uses our agricultural products. I want to be a bridge between the village and the city, not someone who burns the bridge behind him." Zainab's eyes lit up. That's actually a wonderful idea. My father has connections in agricultural export. Maybe we could." "We?" Chukwudi interrupted softly. "We," Zainab confirmed. "If you'll have me as a partner. Business first, and we'll see where it leads." Adana watched this exchange from across the compound, Mama Neka beside her. "Your son has found his path," the old woman observed. "He has," Adana agreed. "And more than that, he has found himself." "And the girl? Will she marry him?" Adana smiled. "Yes. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not even this year. But yes. I see it in her eyes. She is waiting to be sure, as she should. But her heart has already decided." "And you, Adana? Are you at peace?" Adana thought about the question. Peace. Was she at peace? She thought of the years of struggle, the betrayal, the pain of that invitation, the humiliation her son had planned. She thought of the journey from that dark moment to this celebration. "I am at peace," she said finally. "Not because everything is perfect, but because I stood in my truth. I did not beg for my son's love. I did not compromise my dignity for his approval. I simply stood, and in standing, I remained whole. And somehow, miraculously, that standing brought him back to himself." She looked around at her village, at the city women who had become her friends, at her son laughing with Zainab, at the community celebrating under the stars. "Yes, Mama Neka. I am at peace." The wedding took place not in a fancy hotel in Port Harcourt, but in Umunwanyi village. It was a fusion celebration, traditional Igbo rites combined with Islamic traditions, honoring both families' cultures. The compound had been expanded and beautified, but not erased. The new structures stood alongside the old, symbols of growth that honored rather than rejected the past. Adana wore coral beads, the same ones Amora had lent her a year ago but had since gifted to her permanently. Her wrapper was the finest money could buy, but her bearing would have been regal in rags. When it came time for the traditional mother's blessing, Adana stood before the couple, her son, transformed, and Zainab, who had indeed chosen to become her daughter, and spoke words that would be remembered in Umunwanyi for generations. "My children, marriage is not about perfection. It is about persistence. It is not about never falling, but about always getting back up. It is not about where you start, but about the journey you choose to take together." She placed her hands on both their heads. "Chukwudi, you have learned the hardest lesson a man can learn, that success without character is failure in disguise. Remember this when life tempts you to forget. Remember that the village that raised you is not your shame but your strength." "Yes, Mama." "And Zainab, my daughter, you have learned that sometimes love means waiting. Sometimes it means saying no until the answer can honestly be yes. Thank you for loving my son enough to demand that he become worthy of you. Thank you, Mama. Now go. Build a life together. Build a home where children will never be ashamed of their parents because their parents will never be ashamed of themselves. Build a legacy not of wealth alone, but of wealth with wisdom. And when you have your own children, tell them about this day. Tell them about the journey that brought you here. Because the stories we pass down are the only inheritance that truly lasts. The celebration that followed was magnificent, attended by village people and city people, farmers and professors, traditional rulers and corporate executives. It was a symbol of what Chukwudi and Zainab wanted their life to be, a bridge between worlds, honoring all parts of themselves. Dr. Efima and her network sat with the village women, sharing palm wine and stories, the boundaries between city and village, educated and unschooled, wealthy and poor dissolving in the recognition of shared humanity. And as the sun set on Umunwani, painting the sky in impossible colors, Mama Neka leaned over to Adana and whispered, "You know what the ancestors are saying." "What are they saying, Mama?" "They are saying, see? See what happens when a mother stands firm? See what happens when dignity refuses to bow to shame? See what happens when a village remembers its purpose, to raise children, not just to birth them." Adana smiled, watching her son dance with his new wife, seeing the genuine joy on his face, not the performance of happiness, but the reality of it. "Tell the ancestors," she said, "that I hear them. And I thank them for turning my mourning into dancing, my shame into honor, my trial into triumph." "They know," Mama Neka said. "They were always watching. Because a mother's tears are never wasted, and a mother's prayers are never ignored. They just take time to mature, like good palm wine." The drums beat on into the night, carrying the story into the air, where it would be caught by the wind and carried to other villages, other mothers, other sons who needed to hear it. And in the morning, when the celebration ended and life returned to normal, Umunwani would still be there, a small village on a red dirt road, where an ordinary woman had done an extraordinary thing. She had stood in her truth and, in standing, had saved not just her dignity, but her son's soul. Our elders teach us, a tree that forgets its roots will fall in the slightest wind. Success that forgets its source is not success at all, but a house built on sand, waiting for the storm to prove its weakness. Honor your mother. Honor your father. Not because they are perfect, but because their sacrifices, seen and unseen, built the platform from which you reach for the sky. Poverty is not shame. Struggle is not disgrace. The only true shame is in the forgetting, in the pride that makes you deny the womb that carried you. And to the mothers who read this, stand firm in your dignity. Your worth is not determined by your child's recognition of it. You are valuable because you exist, because you sacrificed, because you loved when love was costly. Stand firm, and the ancestors will vindicate you. For as surely as the sun rises, truth will have its day. And shame, when worn with dignity, transforms into glory. I see. So shall it be.